Just 3 months before you're listening to this episode, my sweet, kind, genuine mom, my last parent, passed away. She had been terminally ill for years, and it finally took her. 10 years before that, my dad was killed by a drunk driver at 4 in the afternoon on a road he'd driven on just about daily for 25 years. Those are two of the worst things that have ever happened to me. And unfortunately, there were a lot of hard things that happened in between. But you know what? I'm still. In this episode, I'm sharing why I 100% believe that adversity breeds resilience and how I have been able to get through some of the worst times of my life. And my hope is that this episode encourages you to keep on keeping on, even through your worst times. So I am going to do my best to get through this episode without shedding a tear, but if I do, I just ask that I give myself grace and that you give me grace, because showing emotion, having emotions, it's real, it is a part of life, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. So just wanted to throw that out there. First things first, adversity is inevitable. Sad, devastating, defeating situations are inevitable. You can choose to give in, or you can choose to power through. So this applies to me, this applies to you, this applies to anyone. You know, there are no exceptions to this. This is just a prerequisite of life. Life will never just be 100% rainbows and butterflies, right? But you can find good even in spite of the bad. And I encourage myself to power through. Choose to power through, because we can choose to, or we can choose to power through. So let's choose to power through. For me personally, I have experienced lost dreams and failed expectations, life-changing experiences that were totally positive, just ripped from my hands, breakups that led to living changes, so living situation changes, almost being evicted, friends blowing up at me because they never communicated how I made them feel, and it wasn't a good feeling, navigating difficult people, exceptionally low revenue months in business, thousands of dollars of credit card debt, health scares, the unexpected death of a parent, and the agonizing slow burn of the death of a terminally ill parent. That is just some of the sad, devastating, defeating situations I have been through, and I'm sure there are more. But you know, my point is that in spite of all of those situations, I chose to power through, and I still choose to power through to this day. When my dad died, I was 24. I was living in LA, and you know, I truly felt like I lost one of the only people in the world who loved me unconditionally. And you know, I was right. I did lose one of the only people in the world who loved me unconditionally. It is just a fact. And so, you know, that feeling I had was valid because it was true. And because I was 24, because I was in LA, I could have amped up my partying. I could have gotten so lost in the LA scene. I could have isolated myself from my mom and my brother who were back in Texas. I mean, I was out there on my own. I totally could have gone down this road that, you know, I was treading water with, right? Like I was out there, I was working, I was dating, I was partying, but you know, nothing taking away from my goals. But when my dad died, you know, I could have gone down that road. I could have just immersed myself fully and never looked back, but I didn't. I actually chose to quit drinking. So I did not drink for a year and a half after my dad died. So I was 24, totally high tolerance for drinking and going out and all of that. I chose to quit drinking. I chose to continue putting myself in a good financial position, and I chose to move back home and expedite my financial goals. And I didn't know it then. It hadn't even been a thought, but doing all of that, so going down that path allowed me to be in a position and have the experiences that I needed to start City Girl Savings. So it's just crazy. You really can turn tragedy into triumph. And, I firmly believe that if you can get through your current adversities, so, powering through and trying your best to, maneuver hard times, like if you can get through your current adversities, it will make you better equipped to handle the adversities that come to your next level self. So I've come to realize the problems will never end. The sad, adversity, those defeating situations, they're never going to go away, unfortunately. And the more you level up, the more of those problems will come, just next level problems, right? So if you can't get through your current level problems, you're not going to be ready to handle next level problems. It's just a fact. So again, choosing to power through, choosing to, go through it, do what you got to do and come out on top is a true necessity for moving to the next level. And another thing, I also believe that sad, tragic, defeating, disappointing times, they're not personal, even though they feel like it, right? Like my dad, dying on a road he's always driven on at 4 p.m. by a drunk driver on a weekday, like who is doing that on a weekday? I could have easily taken that personal, right? Like that could have felt very personal. Like in spite of all of the odds and all of the timing and all of the things that, happened to make this situation come to fruition, I could have easily said that's very personal and like, woe is me. But I didn't. Hard, sad, tragic, disappointing times happen to us all, right? And it's going to look different for all of us, first and foremost, but none of us escape them. We all have to go through them. And how we handle them is what really makes the difference, right? No matter what the level of sadness or disappointment it is, like how we handle those situations is what really makes the difference. And I promise you, I do not want this to sound like toxic positivity, but in spite of bad things happening, there is always something good that can be found, okay? And I feel like it's okay if I say that because I've been through some of the worst things you could possibly imagine. And I truly believe that good can come out of anything. And things could always be worse. They could always be worse. Even if you think that you're like at your worst point, I promise you they could always be worse. And I've also come into contact with people who push and promote like a positive mindset, which I'm one of those people. I firmly believe in the power of positive thinking and being a positive person, but it's easy for people who haven't been through much to say, well, just be positive. Well, just think your way to happiness. But I'm someone who's actually been through so much, and I firmly believe and say try your hardest to power through, right? Like try your best to stay on the positive path and don't give in to the lethal distractions. So being positive is not going to solve your problems, right? But it may help you find better solutions. It may help you see things, see opportunities that you wouldn't have seen if you were just so down in the dumps. Now, I recognize that it's very much easier said than done, right? Like it's very easy to say, just do your best to be positive. So much easier to say it than to implement it, but it still needs to be said. And even if you stray from the path every now and then, just work to bring yourself back. You don't have to be positive and happy all of the time, but work to get yourself back to that place or work to get yourself back on the right path that you know you should be on. And it's hard. I'm living in that hard time right now. 3 months, is not a long time when you're dealing with death. So, it's very fresh. My mom's passing, but we are capable. We are capable. Um, my mom was totally fine on a Saturday, and by the following Friday, she was dead. It happened so fast. It happened right before my eyes, but I got to say goodbye. I got to say final words, and I got to know that she heard me just based on the very minimal communication she could do. Got to experience that. And that's so much more than I got to have when my dad died. And for that, I am grateful. So when I say that, you can always find something good in the bad, that's an example. That is a perfect example that I can give you. So while losing both of my parents, which is truly the hardest thing I've ever been through, happened to me, I 100% believe adversity breeds resilience. Those two people were people who loved and supported me more than anyone else. And that is the worst thing that has ever happened to me because I have no kids, right? I'm sure if I have kids one day and if something were to happen to them, I could imagine that would be the worst thing that would ever happen to me, but it's not. I'm not there, and right now I'm dealing with the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but even so, I'm choosing to power through. I'm choosing faith. I'm choosing resilience. I'm choosing to lead an impactful and purposeful life. I'm choosing to show up every day and try my best to be the best version of myself, be the best version of Rhea for my community, my family, my friends, my partner. I'm choosing that. And if I can do it, you can too. So, we're getting ready to wrap up, and I want to end with some of the things that, have helped me get through my most challenging times. I will say not every day is easy. Not every day I wake up with gusto and ready to take on the day, but I still power through, right? I still do my routine. I still get myself out of bed and go through what I need to go through, even if I don't want to or even if I'm not feeling good. So some of the things that have helped me when going through my most challenging times are walking to the sunrise every morning. So there was a new park that was opened close to my house, and when my mom's health started to, take a turn for the worse, I just started walking every morning over there. I typically would walk around my office, but I changed my environment, and walking to the sunrise has been such a peaceful process. Like, it's brought me so much just mental clarity, mental peace. Is so calm and serene. Definitely a game changer for me. Another thing is daily devotionals, especially on grief and challenging times. So I have this app, and you can kind of select like a plan based on what you're going through. And if let's say it's depression or it's death or it's grief or it's stress or anxiety, and they will put together verses and prayers and devotionals to just help you through it. And so that's been incredibly helpful. Another thing that has helped me is listening to meditations and higher power messages. I feel like there's so much happening on a spiritual level, that is totally outside of just our physical, normal, plane of existence. And so listening to meditations, listening to those higher power messages, it's just really helped open my mind to, there's so much more than the problems that I have going on. Another thing is journaling out my thoughts and feelings. I feel like, it's a form of therapy. It's not as good as therapy, don't get me wrong. Therapy is amazing, but on a day-to-day basis, like being able to journal how I feel, journal what I'm thinking has been just very freeing. So I will always continue to do that. And then I would end with letting those close to me know when I'm having sad or bad days. It's so It's tough to tell people that you're struggling, but let people be there for you. And I'm literally saying this to myself. Let people be there for you. And people don't know how to be there for you if you don't communicate. So it's been very helpful for me to share when I'm struggling and to see how people show up. It's been awesome. So if you are going through hard times, I am praying for your courage to power through. I am praying for wisdom so that you know and understand and trust that there's something good on the other side. And I'm praying for grace for you to allow yourself to get through it the best you can. Adversity breeds resilience, and you can handle hard times. I can handle hard times. We are capable of powering through.